Evening. I say evening, it is now my evening because of my schedule, but it's 12:40 on Tuesday morning here in Albuquerque. This is part of the rebuilding of the Whisky Basics playlist. If you watched the previous couple of videos, you'll know that on one of them, my phone, I have it propped up because I'm recording on my phone. It just went flink. And in trying to rescue it, I wound up ending the video and I just posted it because I was finishing up anyways. I think I found a way to prevent that from happening. We'll see. It was the first time it happened, and although I've had phone slippages before, that's the first time it had fallen. But we'll see. This video is, well, in the list I have that I made to prepare the original Whisky Basics playlist, I know that's going to block your view of me, but it's going to help me, so please bear with me. This new setup has affected the height of the camera, even if by barely, and because of my eyes looking this way to the screen but that way to the glass, it's easier to see it on screen, but because the camera's up a little, the glass is down a little. The original question that I answered for this particular video in the original Whisky Basics playlist really had 3 parts, and I'm going to condense it down. But before I do, let me present to you George Dickel Bottled in Bond. I haven't, maybe I did. You'll have to go back and check because my mind isn't giving me much useful information here. I might have already done a video on what Bottled in Bond whiskey is. If I haven't, I will. I know that's on the list. I just don't know if I've done it yet. A lot of people don't care for George Dickel. I'm presuming it's something that the yeast does, because different yeast strains will create different congeners, that's the word for them, which then impart various flavors to the final product, along, of course, with the wood. And a lot of people say they get a Flintstones vitamin note from Dickel juice. I don't. It wouldn't bother me because I always liked Flintstones vitamins when I was a kid. Maybe I'd take my vitamins if I bought me some Flintstones. But what I get from Dickel is nuts. A lot of people get nuttiness from Jim Beam. I very rarely get that. But from Dickel, from this particular bottle, I get walnuts. From their white label, I get pecans. Either way, I like it. The question is, why should you buy whiskey? Well, that's not necessarily the best way to put it, because you might not want to buy whiskey, in which case there's nothing that says you have to. If you want nothing to do with whiskey, A, you don't have to, and B, why are you watching this video? So we assume, if you're watching this video, if you are one of the now 60 subscribers to this channel, I assume, and you know what happens when you assume, but I do it, that you are interested in whiskey, that perhaps you are at least somewhat new to whiskey and want to have all this information in one place. That's why I'm rebuilding this Whisky Basics playlist, because the whole point of the channel is the basics of whiskey. Everything else is gravy. So assuming you do have an interest in whiskey, why should you buy it? To drink? To collect? Or as an investment? There are people who buy it to drink, people who buy it to collect it, people who buy it as an investment. Now, all the big whiskey channels have been talking lately about the collapse of the bourbon bubble, as though it's the end of the world and there will be no more bourbon nor anybody drinking bourbon. Well, fads come and go. At one time it was a fad to drink bourbon, then it became a fad not to drink bourbon, and that we had what they call the bourbon dark ages. And then bourbon became fashionable again, and now maybe it's going out of fashion, but there will always be people who enjoy bourbon. And for that matter, there will always be people who enjoy Scottish whiskey, Irish whiskey, rye whiskey, corn whiskey, what they call a burr rye. It's a blend of a bourbon whiskey and a rye whiskey. There will always be people who enjoy Japanese whiskey or Indian whiskey. There will always be people who drink whiskey. They might not always be as large a number, but there will always be people who genuinely, themselves, personally like whiskey. The faddists come and go. You know, at one time it was a fad to have a mustache. Now, I've had one most of my life because I like it. I don't care about anybody else's opinion. If you don't like my mustache, tough toenails. I'm the one's got to look at myself in the mirror every morning. Then the fad went away and people were clean shaven, and then goatees came in and you got just the chin without any whiskers anywhere else. Sorry about the unannounced pause. I thought I heard something and I went to check on it. Oh, okay, it's the people upstairs. Sometimes they sound like elephants trompling around. But now we have the fad of the big full beard and the shaved head. It comes and goes. You look at let me pick The Undertaker, now retired professional wrestler. When he started, he had this bushy, long red hair. Then he had short hair. At one point, he had a shaved head. Then he had the long, greasy-looking hair. You know, he went according to fads. And you see this in other famous people. Rob Halford, the lead singer of Judas Priest, for years had the bleached blonde hair and was clean shaven. Then as he got older, suddenly he grew a goatee and shaved his head. That was the fashion. One of the things I enjoy about the Rolling Stones is not just their music, but the way that there are three remaining original Stones in the band. Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, I say three, there are two. Ronnie Wood is not an original member, but he's been there so long I tend to think of him as one. They dress and they do their hair and they're still clean shaven the way they've pretty much always done it. They have what they like and they stick with it. They don't care what anybody else says. And that's how it is with whiskey. Some of us, we don't care. We'll always drink it. Speaking of drinking it, maybe I should. There's the walnuts. Oh man, all over the finish am I getting walnuts. And I think they've changed something in the Coke formula. The past couple of weeks, I've always, well, not always, but I found long ago that Coke works better for me to cleanse my palate than water does. But the past couple of weeks, regardless of which variety of Coke, it's been leaving a weird taste in my mouth, and it's affecting my whiskey. So I may start having to have a bottle of water instead. But for those of you who keep on with whiskey, regardless of the fad, why should you buy whiskey? Let me put a proposition to you. Distillers make whiskey for people to drink. I hear Laura Branigan. I got the radio on behind me in the living room. Gloria. Lady died at 50-something, I think, as a problem with her heart that nobody had ever known was there, and it killed her one night in her sleep. But she could sing. But I had a sentence coming forth, and it just right out my head. But distillers make whiskey to drink. Therefore, I think that if you're going to buy whiskey, it should be to drink. Now, you may have certain bottles that are so good or so expensive or both that you reserve them for special occasions, a son's birthday, a friend's wedding, a promotion at work, whatever it may be that for you is a special occasion. I tried that with my first bottle of the Kelly Liquor store pick of Knob Creek bourbon, and I haven't done that since. For me, I mark a special occasion by just having an extra glass beyond what I would normally have that night. But to me, even the best whiskey is there to drink. Why not enjoy it instead of leaving it on the shelf for 5 years before you open it again? Now, that is my view. YMMV, Yankee Mike Mike Victor. Your mileage may vary. Old BBS acronym. I still use some of those, even though these days there is no valid reason for a bunch of silly abbreviations. Nobody's limiting, well, on Twitter and Twitter clones, yeah, they limit you to X thing, but then you can go right to the next and the next and the next. But I don't do Twitter. I have an account, but I don't do Twitter precisely because sometimes you cannot say something in just 2 sentences. Which is why I prefer books to movies. I enjoy Interview with the Vampire, a great movie. Tom Cruise even did good in it. But the book has so much in it that you can't put into a movie, not unless it's a week-long movie. But for me, that's the reason to buy whiskey, to drink. I drink. However, there are people who collect whiskey, just as others collect first editions of books, whatever books. Just as some people collect, oh shoot, I'm not a collector, but so, some people might collect salt shakers. Some people might collect classic cars like Jay Leno. And the purpose of Jay's car collection isn't so he can get to and from work each day. Maybe he drives one or the other of them now and then, but he's not using it as his regular transportation, not those classic cars that he has. He's buying them to have them. Leg itched. And if that is what you want to do with whiskey, that is your right. I can't comprehend it. It's like buying a hamburger from Whataburger, a hamburger from McDonald's, a hamburger from Blake's, a hamburger from Fuddruckers, and not eating any of them, but encasing them in vacuum sealed plastic and just having them. That's what it seems like to me. To you, it may seem different, in which case it's your money, you're free to spend it how you please. You can collect and not drink to your heart's content. I don't understand it, but I won't condemn you for it. And then there are those who buy whiskey as an investment. Right now, and this is October, the middle of October, I think now, being on Tuesday, I think it's the 14th. I'm not going to go check the calendar, even though it's right over here. But the middle of October 2025, it might not be so much of a good investment anymore. There was a period, and I started drinking whiskey in 2021 when this was all going on, where some bottles of whiskey, you could buy them and a year later sell them. Just buy and sell. You didn't even actually have to physically own the whiskey. You could have somebody pick it up for you, store it, then when you sold it, pass it on. Although I don't know if anybody did that. That would be extra expense. But there were bottles of whiskey that you could buy at the liquor store for $100 if you found them, and sell them a year later for $1,000 maybe. And there were, and I'm sure there still are some, even with the climate as it is. Climate change. Oh, the whiskey climate has changed. I live in Albuquerque. Been here 30 years. The climate's always been the way it is this year. Unpredictable. I have talked to people who have lived in Albuquerque 70 years, their whole lives. And they talk about the climate's changing. And then when I say, well, I've been here X number of years, it's always been this way. They say, yeah, it's always been this way my whole life. If it's always been this way, it ain't a-changing. You know, that's like saying, oh, that mountain's always been that way. Oh, you know, past 300 years. I have a picture of it from 300 years ago. They drew it exactly the same, but it's changing rapidly. The pseudo-scientific nonsense that parades through this world, and people swallow it whole. Howsoever, there are flippers, perhaps not as many as they used to because the climate's changed. And their whole reason for buying whiskey is to then sell it at a profit. Now, that's illegal. According to federal law, a distillery can only sell to a distributor who can only sell to a liquor store or a bar. Or in some states, there's a fourth layer where the distributor sells to a liquor store who then sells to the bar. They call it the three-tier system. It's an idiotic stupidity. It's forcing a middleman into a transaction where no middleman is actually necessary. Now, if I buy a bottle of whiskey and then sell it to somebody else at a profit, am I the distiller? No. Am I the distributor? No. Am I the retailer? No. I'm the person who's supposed to keep the whiskey. Technically, well, I'm better not go down that road. I'm not as certain even as a technically maybe. But it is illegal for me to buy a bottle of whiskey and then sell it to somebody else. I'm neither a distiller, nor a distributor, nor a retailer. But that happens. And so you have the three reasons to buy whiskey: to drink, to collect, to invest. I've already told you what I think is the best. I prefer to drink my whiskey. That's the only reason I buy it. I don't have a lot of books. I don't have the room for them. One good thing about whiskey is you finish a bottle, that clears out room for another bottle. You finish a book, what do you do with it? You want to reread it, just like I want to buy another, drink this stuff again when this bottle's gone. So you keep the book. Well, it takes up space permanently. But every book I own, I have at least read at. I have some commentaries which are not designed just to read through, and I don't even attempt that. Bible commentaries, by the way. But those are the three reasons. Whichever reason suits you, that's what you should do. I do encourage you, even if you're a collector, even if you're an investor, even if you're a flipper, buy some things and drink them. Why not enjoy this brown stuff? On that note, I move the bottle aside, and my wife is in my mind, and so I'll go Korean on y'all. Tupshida.